I enjoy making
Mhm.
music. Um, so before we get started, I'm just going to acknowledge that I am streaming from the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation, and I'll just do a little bit of uh, housekeeping just to explain the format. It's the same as last time for anybody who's here for the Keenan Walcott one, and it's the same format we're going to have for the other ones going forward. Uh, we are going to be starting with some opening words from Sarah, and then we're going to ask some pre-selected questions that our EDA has come up with. And then that should be about half the time of the interview, possibly less, depending on how much time Sarah takes to answer. And then we will open the floor to audience questions from the YouTube chat. So if you are watching us live on YouTube right now, all you have to do is type into the chat window your question, press enter. There is a character limit. Somebody ran into this issue last time, sending me messages while we were doing this saying the chat's not working for me. If you type more than 200 characters, it won't let you put it in. So you have to type less than that and do it in multiple sections if you got a particularly long question. Um, when we're done the audience questions and time is up, I'll give Sarah an opportunity to say some final words, how people can follow her, reach out to her, any questions that they had that didn't get answered. We could forward along to her afterwards if you like. And without further ado, welcome Sarah. Thanks for coming on to our interview series with the I'm a Ladysmith EDA. Uh,
Yeah,
so let's hear a bit about you. Why you're running to be the leader of the Green Party of Canada? What brought you to this point?
sure. Well, I have been an environmentalist pretty much my whole life. My environmentalism is really grounded in just a love of nature. My dad's from Northern Ontario, and my mom's from Northern Ontario as well. And so I just grew up understanding and loving, being really comfortable walking around in the forest. In Northern Ontario, we call it the bush. So I might slip and say walking around in the bush. And then my mom had cancer when I was a kid, and when she passed away, I went to the forest to get healing. I was 15 when she passed away, and went to the forest to find healing. And so my spiritualism, my connection to nature is spiritual, and my connection to nature is emotional. Because I came to realize, or I came to really believe that that our planet is suffering in much the way my mother suffered. And at the time in the 80s, that was that term ecofeminism. And it became vilified in many ways, that term ecofeminism, but I would still consider myself an ecofeminist. Maybe in some ways it resonates with this new term eco-socialist. So I read Small is Beautiful. It is a book by E.F. Schumacher. Many consider it to kind of be the manifesto of the green political movement. I read Die Grünen by Charlene Spretnak and Fritjof Capra. Again, it was a very seminal work in the beginning of the green political movement. And everybody comes to the Green Party in different ways for different reasons. And for me, I really resonate with our key principle of participatory democracy, and that vision that power should always be diffused to the local level or the regional level, and that and I've been waiting for that to happen in the Green Party of Canada since I joined in 2005. And I'm just a member. I started my EDA in 2006. I ran as a candidate. We brought in Lorraine Reckmans as our candidate after that for 2 elections. And I love our Constitution. I've got to know our Constitution very well. I've participated in our member-made policy process quite deeply every year. And I brought forward our new policy our new constitutional amendment to have our general meetings every year instead of every other year. And I feel really responsible for that. So that is one of the reasons I did decide to run, is I feel responsible for bringing us to this vision of a very diffused power structure. And I feel responsible for bringing us to this vision of a leader who gives the collective credit and is true to our member-made policy process. And I feel really responsible that if we ratify it at the next general meeting, we will be having general meetings every year and not every other year. And so we really do need to evolve to a living policy process. And I think that all of that is important because the climate crisis requires it. The climate crisis requires that communities become very resilient at the local level and very self-sufficient at the local level. We have a crisis in democracy in Canada, and people need to feel that direct democracy experience, that they really are affecting the decisions that rule their day-to-day lives. And we need to make that true in the Green Party of Canada first, and then showcase that for Canadians.
Right on. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, participatory democracy is a very, very strong point. Oh, I see it is changing the view for everybody else when I change the view. So I'll leave it on speaker view here. Sorry about that, everybody. Two other pieces of housekeeping that I forgot to mention. We've got on the YouTube chat, just same as last time, folks will see that there's Neil and Vic in there as our moderators. If you are being snarky or condescending or just a mean person, you'll get put on timeout. And then if you continue to do it after you get put on timeout, you will get kicked out. And just for your knowledge, Sarah, all of these questions, we've got time for the answers. I've passed them to you in advance. I'm sure Brandon passed them on to you so you can see how much time you've got for each of the questions. Okay, well, I will let you know how much time you've got to answer each of the questions. And Vic's going to pop his camera on and flash a card that'll tell you when you're halfway, when you've got 30 seconds left, and when time's up.
Okay, let me just make sure I can see Vic's view. Switch to gallery view. That's what I need to do. Okay, great.
Perfect. Okay, so our first question is about the climate. How fitting. So according to a recent Ipsos poll, only 34% of Canadians are concerned about climate change, whereas in other countries surveyed, on average, it's about 48% concerned. This is one of the countries that's going to be currently facing one of the greatest temperature changes on Earth. As you know, the Arctic is warming 3 or 4 times as fast as the rest of the world. Canada is set to warm 2 or 3 times as fast. I can't remember the exact numbers, but somewhere in that range. How do we actually bring climate and the environment back to the front of mind for Canadians in the context of all the other myriad ongoing issues we've got? What can we do to make this a central concern of Canadians again?
Well, young people
that's
definitely
4 minutes
know.
You got for that.
Young people definitely know, right? And if we're not listening to young people, then that's a dereliction of duty on every Canadian's part. They have been learning in school. I'm a secondary school teacher. I teach politics and Indigenous studies, and young people have been taught in schools. So anybody who's 25 years or younger has learned since kindergarten that their future is in peril in terms of like extinction level peril. And so that's why we see a bit of an age gap. Like maybe these polls, if they were polling just people 25 and under, the number would jump, to 100% of Canadians concerned. So you always got to take a poll with a grain of salt, right? And in Canada, we are shielded right now because it's just science, right? If you take a glass of water and you put an ice cube in it, pretend that the ice cube has got blue food coloring in it, and that ice cube starts to melt, then the cup will get colder. And that's what's happening to us right now, right? So the polar ice cap is melting, and we feel fine. We don't notice a change really. I mean, we've noticed some climate change for sure. And out in BC, you folks are really feeling it. But in most of Canada, our temperatures are kind of regulated for now. The problem is what happens when the ice cube is fully melted, right? And a lot of these pollutions are invisible. So as the tundra is melting, the methane being released, and we know that methane is a far worse greenhouse gas than carbon, that's a runaway system. So when they talk about tipping points, we've really reached some pretty serious tipping points. And And it behooves us as Canadians. One thing I'd really like us to talk about, and I'll be holding nightly table talks as soon as I'm leader, is talking about creating a proper climate crisis refugee plan for Canada. We will be a have country. There are many countries that will be facing pure desertification, many countries that will be underwater. And Canada, we're going to suffer. We're going to have a hard time. Everybody's going to have a hard time. But it behooves us to have an intelligent climate refugee plan in place before things start to get really bad.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, albedo effect. It's a pretty profound one. One thing a lot of folks don't realize is that the state transition from ice to liquid is several degrees worth of warming. So, oh, Vic's having difficulty with his video.
And then there's that feedback loop of, like white reflects light, right? So the polar ice caps reflect sunlight, and that has helped keep our planet moderated in a good way. But as soon as that's gone, then all of a sudden all that water is taking in more and more sunlight, and then you get more extreme storms and
tons of tipping points. 9 out of 13.
Yeah. I mean, the more extreme climate forecasts are talking about sea level rises of 10 meters. Some talk about 20 meters sea level rises. So it behooves us to really think intelligently now. And that's what my platform is all about, is creating the infrastructures now, particularly starting with food security and small scale energy resiliency. We need to start creating those infrastructures now at the local levels, so that 50 years from now, 100 years from now, the generations that will have to face the real brunt of the climate crisis have those infrastructures in place.
Absolutely.
And that's what Greens are really good at.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd say we're the most forward-thinking party in terms of things like that. So next question, you got 5 minutes for this one. This is, in my opinion, the most important question that we can ask in these interviews, because I think there was some confusion with our last leader. What do you consider the role of party leader to be?
I love this question. Like I said earlier, my degree is in politics and Indigenous studies. And so I really believe deeply in separation of powers. And so that means that the judicial branch, the legislative branch or the political branch, and the executive branch need to be separate. And so the problem is that as Greens, because we're a very small family, we do tend to wear a lot of hats, especially at the electoral district association level. So often the president or the CEO will step down and become the candidate. People who are the media chair on the EDA become the media chair of the campaign. And so we're used to that. But when it comes to the party structure at the level above, at that kind of central, then I really think it behooves the leader to butt out of executive business, whether it's fund or any kind of decision making around that. The leader should not really interfere, and same goes for the executive branch or the judicial branch, that they should not interfere at the political level, right? And so that's my role at the political level. It's my role at the political level to appoint deputy leaders and to let members know my goals for the deputy leaders. So that part of my platform is coming out later this week, all those deliverables, right? My platform around how I will be choosing shadow cabinet. According to our constitution, that's the leader's purview, is to choose shadow cabinet. And most importantly, I think it is the leader's role to be true to that member-made policy process that I was talking about in the beginning. So if you go to sarahgabriellebaron.ca, you'll see my full platform. It just came out today. And every single plank directly references member-made policy. We have to be seen that we're a collective now. It can't just be given up to one person, no matter how amazing they are. It has to be seen that we're a collective movement and that we're true to that promise of grassroots decision-making power. Because again, the climate crisis requires it. We all have to be leaders. And I know that change is frightening. And when people are afraid, they want to give it up to a strong man. Right? That's why politics is running the way it is right now, celebrity-based politics. People are afraid. Everybody's afraid. And so they give it up to a strong man, a fella who just seems really sometimes angry, and that they're gonna save you. They're gonna stick up for your rights. Thank you. I see, Vic. Yeah, I'll wrap it up. and that's just cowardice speaking. And it's just honest fear speaking, right? That we know that we are in very troubled times. And that's not the Canada I know. The Canada I know is that we are brave, that we are humble, that we are loving towards each other. And nowhere do you see that exemplified more than in Greens, right? I've been phoning Greens. I've spoken to hundreds of Greens in the past 3 weeks. And whenever you go to Green meetings, we're just happy, gentle, joyful people. And we also are very determined, and we're also very passionate. So managing that as the leader is my job. But I am a very rules-based person, and I believe deeply in our Constitution. I believe deeply in our 6 key principles. I've been a member since 2005, and I have a fully worked out plan of how to be true to those.
Right on, thanks. Just a quick, I'm just going to interject this here because it is a question that somebody proposed in the EDA, and I saw a really good opportunity because you mentioned it. Just a simple yes or no. When becoming leader, our last leader actually fired all of the shadow cabinet, the entirety of it. And our EDA member was just curious if you would take that same approach or let some of them stay on.
I love our shadow cabinet right now, and that's basically one of the best legacies from Annamie Paul is that she did bring in really awesome people into the shadow cabinet. Devyani Singh, Alison Lamb, Sandy Crawley.
Oh, yeah.
They're all really cool. And so one really cool thing is that in that leader vacuum between Annamie Paul and Dr. Kuttner coming in, they kept meeting, and they're still meeting. And so with my shadow cabinet, with our shadow cabinet, what I'm hoping that we'll do is continue to meet at least monthly, and that the shadow cabinet will provide a newsletter to Greens, whoever Greens are interested, and so that we get to see the Canadian federal level news through the Green lens. Because that's what they do when they meet. They go through each and everybody's portfolio and they say what's going on this week in their portfolio. And it's brilliant information. It's all through the Green lens. And I'd love us to be able to make that available to members.
Great. Sorry, didn't really answer the question.
And so to answer it directly, I will not fire the people who are on right now. Absolutely not. No.
Thanks for answering. Cool. Yeah, really, really hardworking folks. I should be more involved. I recognize Devyani Singh, but okay. So the next question we got, 6 minutes for this one. This is yes, it's a pretty big question. There's a lot of approaches and ground to cover with this. We suffered a huge loss in the last election. It was our worst performance in 20 years, or maybe it was since 2000. That's 20 years anyway. The biggest loss that we've had in such a long time. What are the most important steps to rebuild our membership, gain public support, and trust of our members again? 6 minutes for this one.
Ooh. That is a huge question. Well, I'm pleased to announce that we are already bouncing back. And a poll came out, I think today or yesterday, that said we're polling across the country at 5%. So that is, it's not our highest, but it's definitely coming back to where we started pre-2021. But we have a lot of work to do, right? We definitely have a lot of work to do. And that is why I'm running. Like I said, I've been a member since 2005, and I am deeply aware of what we did wrong. So in terms of rebuilding the party, I think that we need to show that innovation of methodology, like I was saying earlier. But one plank I haven't talked about yet is that I've believed for years is that there's 2 key ways to make the Green Party, that to make members feel like they are really part of the process. And one is our electoral district associations, and the other is our member-made policy process. So I've talked a lot about our member-made policy process, and you can dig in more into that in my platform at sarahgabriellebaron.ca. But our electoral district associations are the heartbeat of a decentralized power structure, and they have been suffering. So when I joined in 2005, we talked about a one-third funding structure. 1/3 of donations would go to electoral district associations. 1/3 of donations would go to that regional level. So the EDAs do get together sometimes at a regional level. And then 1/3 would go to headquarters. And that conversation totally died in 2006. We became a very central focused party. And the problem is that in the green vision, it's grassroots, right? And you've got this collective that's working together. And really, I think that it's the leader's job to showcase that in all ways. To make the electoral district association strong in between elections is my goal. That's my promise as leader. That is my day one goal, is to help the EDAs cross-communicate, share resources. It's my job to learn what the issues are and to grow electoral district associations in between elections, because that's how you win elections, is to have that team strong, right? But to win, this is the conundrum. And it's not just the Green Party of Canada. It's Green parties worldwide since inception. They talk about it in Die Groenen, that to win, you have to play the game by the game's rules. And that requires a hierarchical top-down structure. And so in the Green Party of Canada, those two tensions have been really at loggerheads for a long time. And it's my belief that we can get good at both. We just need a leader who is willing to give the credit to the collective in all ways at all times. So I believe that if we can take a bit of time to focus inward on those electoral district associations and on our member-made policy process, that structurally we will be living up to the promise that I've been waiting for since I joined in 2005. And meantime, it's my job to present on the international stage with my deputy leaders, with our caucus, that really professional front that we can talk about all issues at all times. And it's my job as leader to show that when I do talk about whatever issue, that I know our member-made policy. I've got it right since 1988 in my mind. I've got it memorized, and I can give the members the credit at every chance I get. So that is, in a nutshell, that's the vision that I'm presenting to members. But there's something else that I'd like to talk about in the time that I have left, and that is a sense of joy. And that's something that keeps us green, is that when we have our meetings, that they are joyful. And when we get together, we are peaceful, loving people, generally speaking. Greens are really just nice, peaceful, loving people. And we need to bring that back. So we worry a lot about money, right? We worry too much about money, and we need to do some fundraising. And so that's something that you will see from the leader's office is, yes, a professionalization of some of our processes, for sure. Reporting and supporting for people who have experienced aggressions or microaggressions. I want to have that, at least at the leader's office, very streamlined. And we need to have monthly phone calling sessions. We need to really improve our social media game as a collective. That's something that you will see coming from the leader's office. But mostly when it comes to fundraising and coordinating between EDAs, between the leader's office, focusing on the climate crisis, focusing on your regional environmental issues, it's my job to champion those. But when we get together, sometimes we have to insert fun. And that was one of the best things about those virtual general meetings, right? We had the Global Greens come in. We had a second track that allowed you to just take a break from the policy discussions if you needed to. And when you go to the EDA when you go to the picnics and that sort of thing that electoral district associations go to and run, they're fun. And I think that will help grow our membership, a sense of lightheartedness, because our job is hard. It's not easy being green.
You're right. Oscar the Grouch said it first, eh? Yeah. Absolutely. We do try to have a lot of fun with the events that we put on as an EDA. And I appreciate you mentioning, even if it was in passing, that our social media presence, because it is abysmal right now. Um,
Mhm.
so the next question we got is a short one. If a by-election were to be called in a riding in Canada away from your home riding, in which we, the GPC, had a chance of winning, would you be willing to move there and run in that riding? And follow-up question to that, would you be willing to relocate to run in a winnable riding for the next general election? So that's 2 minutes.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's another reason why I'm running is just time of life. I am a teacher, so I am able to take on supply teaching jobs. I'm able to move. My children have flown the nest. They're fairly independent now. And so it's very good timing for me to have that flexibility. My campaign team has already identified 12 ridings that could very well go into by-election. I'm very deeply supportive of Mary Kidnew, who is going to be in a by-election called Any Day Now. She's already door knocking. That's in Mississauga Lakeshore. And by-elections are a really cool opportunity for all of us to gain institutional knowledge. And so I will be definitely taking, if I'm not running in a by-election, then I will definitely be taking a keen interest in not just helping out the team working on that by-election, but having all of us learn best practices, not just out of the leader's office, but electoral district associations, observing what's going on during that by-election and learning from it and building back up our institutional knowledge. Because what I've seen over the years is that Greens come in, they volunteer on their electoral district association, something happens. Often they become disillusioned because, like I was saying, we're not living up to that dream of a grassroots structure, and they leave. And sometimes EDAs fold. 2016 was the worst year if you go through Elections Canada to see how many EDAs folded, worse actually than 2021. So we need to build up that institutional knowledge in a way that keeps those lateral communications really strong. And that's, I believe, the definition of grassroots, because they do run laterally.
Right. Yeah, definitely a lot of campaign knowledge that we could benefit from having spread out around the party. So next question here is one about the economy. Life seems more unaffordable than at any time in recent memory, with sky high inflation, and still, despite that, many basic government services not even operating at full capacity, like healthcare, for example. We can get into that a bit later. But what do you see as the best means to tackle this unaffordability crisis? 5 minutes for this.
Yeah, Greens go about the economy in a much more holistic way than any other political philosophy. So whether you're socialist or a liberalist or a conservative frame of mind, all of those are within the capitalist framework. And capitalism controls our lives, right? Capitalism is our roads. Capitalism is our entertainment. Capitalism is our economy. Capitalism, it makes us feel safe. But capitalism is killing us. So it's a real, we're caught at this crux of not being able to switch away from the capitalist system because it is everything, but knowing in our heart of hearts that it is killing us. And Greens are brave. We don't shy away from that fact. The other parties are just blindly carrying on. And even in many ways, it gets worse. So corporate freedoms, corporate protections, outright kleptocracy, those systems are continuing under the other parties. And it's only Greens that have the intelligence and the bravery and the humility to say, we need to change. We need to change fundamentally. So in my platform at sarahgabriellebaron.ca, you will see that I champion some of the macroeconomic and microeconomic evolutions that Greens have been talking about for more than 10 years. One of the key macroeconomic changes is that we've always talked about a genuine progress indicator as the measure of our nation's health, more than gross domestic product. If we can get enough Canadians believing that gross domestic product is actually a really evil way, a fundamentally capitalist, like it's the worst of capitalism to measure our nation's health by GDP. And if we can switch to genuine progress indicator, then that is a huge change just in our mass consciousness. So it's something that Greens have championed for a long time, and I will continue to champion. In terms of microeconomic tools, these ideas that negative externalities like pollution and social misery, corporations don't put a dollar value on that. That's just free, and that's why they're called negative externalities. But for Greens, we want to make them negative internalities. We want to put a price on pollution. We want to put a price on human suffering. We want to put a price on the climate crisis, on carbon, on methane. And the problem is that there just isn't the political will because of the way our system is set up. And so Greens will never give up on those, but we have really excellent tools in our toolbox. Again, you'll see on my platform that I reference, I think, 5 different microeconomic tools that we can start working on right now. And I know that Elizabeth champions these in the House, and I will continue to back her up on those, like carbon pricing, basic carbon pricing tools. And really, though, we don't have time to wait. The climate crisis is here. Future generations are going to suffer terribly unless we create the infrastructures now to support them. And that means a national food security mandate. The other parties have no interest. They haven't even talked about a national food security mandate. And that is one of the first things that I'll be working on, is holding once a week a table talk that any Green can attend, and bringing forward that huge bank of knowledge among the Green family on no-till gardening that we know is a huge carbon sequestration method of creating food. Local-based food security options, a hub of information for Canadians to go to, but most importantly, bringing that together at the national level for a national food security mandate that moves us away from industrial agriculture. And once that's done, we will focus on small-scale energy solutions. Once that infrastructure of how do Greens talk this out, how do we then translate that information into something that Canadians can consume? We can get good at this. Our last 2 virtual general meetings were so amazing. I know that we can get good at this.
Right on.
It's okay, Vic. I think that's it.
All finished up. Sorry for I'm sick. I'm sure you figured that out at this point with all the stuffy nose sounds I'm making here. I had a question that something that you mentioned in there. The GDP. Fun fact: a car crash increases GDP. And if anybody ever wants to talk to you about how important GDP is, just mention that to them and say, what are we really measuring? Is this what we actually want? This is not doesn't seem to me like the kind of society that we want to try to build, where a car crash is a good thing,
Yeah.
So next question.
And that evolution. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I could go on about that all day, but that evolution of that evolution away from capitalism requires both, right? It requires that kind of macroeconomic big philosophy change and those microeconomic tools that make negative externalities into negative internalities. And those tools are being taught at universities and colleges right now. Students know how to do it. Business people know how to do it. The only reason it's not being made into law is because we have kleptocrats running this country.
Yeah, and people who are ideologically static, basically, I'd say. So our next question, do you believe it is moral to use housing as an investment? 4 minutes for that.
Do I believe it is moral to use housing as an investment? Kind of like the game of Monopoly, right? Like you buy property housing in terms of like being a landlord.
It's up to you how you want to interpret the question, but we're talking about profiting off of housing.
Yeah. I know that we have policy on this, and I'm trying to, it's not something that I've focused on so far in my platform. So I apologize. And I don't have the policy book in front of me. Yes and no, really. I mean, it depends, right? If you're a bad landlord and you're overcharging and you're kicking people out, and your community is suffering in terms of a houselessness crisis, then that needs to be changed. But those are unfortunately not federal level issues. Those are municipal level issues, city level issues, and provincial level issues. So it's hard. That's one of the reasons why it is hard for me to speak to, because I am a federal level politician, right? We do have platform on our website about a houselessness crisis. It needs better development among the membership so that we can have that cohesion of messaging. But what I will tell you is that Greens care, and Greens on the ground are working on houselessness issues. So for example, one of the communities that I focused on calling, not last week, but the week before, was Peterborough in Ontario. And they are coordinating with a nonprofit organization to build 15 tiny homes, to try to get funding, to try to get a place to put them. And the Greens wear many hats. And these are things that we are good at, right? So if a member wants my leader's office to hold a policy table talk, maybe twice a month, where any member can attend, and we can have that level of just expertise, right? Whoever asked that question, you are an expert in that field. I recognize that you are an expert in that field, and you want your voice to be heard, and you want your solutions to be brought to the national stage. So it's my job as leader to hold a policy table talk on this issue and to help us create policy that's really good, really sound. It's stuff that I can say in the media. It's stuff that other candidates can say. It's stuff we can put in our election platform, and we will have cohesion of political messaging. But as leader, it's not my job right now to answer that question in a way that just comes from something that I pulled out of my hat. I'm never going to do that as leader. It's always going to be something that comes from the collective, either in our past member-made policy or something that we're working on now that we've collectively agreed to together.
I appreciate your candor. It's I think one of the most important things to be able to say is to be comfortable saying is I don't know, if you don't actually know, and not, you made a point earlier about people do react to having strong individuals come forward and say, I've got this under control, and people definitely want that. But when it comes to internal politics, I mean, I think it's important to not play that strong arm, Yeah.
Well, that's my platform, is that we need to be true to process. We need to be true to grassroots, to a collective promise that we are a collective, right? Mm-hmm. And so one thing that I would talk about within that subject of houselessness is that Greens really innovate around cooperative housing solutions and cooperative communities. And that's something that I know we can bring forward, and that I do know that we have policy on.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of co-ops coming up here in Nanaimo. They're building a new one actually up in the north end. So we got a question from the audience now. That's the end of our pre-selected questions that our EDA came up with. So first question we got here is about the concept of co-leadership. I'm sure you're aware that two of the four teams that are running are co-leadership teams. They say 4 other candidates lack sufficient confidence to hold the leadership position without co-opting another candidate. How do you propose to function without such assistance? It's a bit pointed.
Well, as a feminist, I'm perfectly capable of doing this on my own. As a feminist, I find the whole thing that's happening right now really, really difficult to understand why it's a positive presentation to Canadians. I'm also, like I said earlier, I'm a real stickler for rules. I know our Constitution inside and out, and I'm also a stickler for a member-made policy process, because that's grassroots. That's the definition of the Green Party of Canada. So to have 4 of the 6 of your options directly contravening our process, whereby if you want to make a change to the Constitution, you do it as a member. You propose it to members, we vote on it. It either gets green lit or it gets yellow lit. And if it gets yellow lit, then it goes back to the drawing table and we talk it out. But you don't use the power of the leadership race to circumvent our member-made policy process and our member-made constitutional change process, which is what they're doing. I think it is an abuse of the power that is invested in a leadership race. And it's also deeply confusing. If you want to vote for Elizabeth May, you get to vote for her twice. If you want to vote for Anna Keenan, you get to vote for her twice. If you want to vote for Jonathan, you get to vote for him twice, on and on. If you want to vote for me, you only get to vote for me once. So we have not figured it out, and there are some real problems with it. But as a feminist, I'm perfectly capable of soldiering on just the way I am.
Fair enough. Next audience question we got here, and by the way, Sarah, I'm sorry I didn't mention a time frame for these things. Unless I state otherwise, for audience questions, we're gonna say that's a 4-minute answer. Time limit on those. Okay. This is a short question. What is your understanding of sustainable? Sustainable is put in quotes. What does that word mean to you?
Sure. Well, I could probably go on for about 14 minutes on this one. So Gro Harlem Brundtland wrote the Brundtland Report. I think it was the late 80s. And the term sustainability ran throughout it. So at the inception of the Green political movement in the early 80s, there were 4 pillars: ecological wisdom, social justice, nonviolence, and participatory democracy. And then when the Global Greens got together, they created 2 more that kind of flowed out of those. And one was respect for diversity, and the other one was sustainability. And that term, sustainability, kind of got co-opted by the corporate capitalists of the world. And they have abused the concept of sustainability to pretend that their actions are sustainable when they clearly are not. So sustainability is a term fraught with double entendre, right? Like double meaning and misinterpretation. To Greens, and you'll see in my platform, when I talk about sustainability, that's where I embed a lot of those economic changes that I was talking about earlier. So when I'm talking about ecological wisdom, I'm focusing in on things like protect old growth forests and a moratorium on new nuclear, and recognizing that the climate crisis is real. So that food security, small scale energy resiliency, retrofits, we can decrease our carbon budget by 60%, our carbon footprint by 60% if we really go hard on efficiencies and retrofits. But within the sustainability part of my platform, that's where I talk about those economic changes. One person I'd love to highlight is Mike Nickerson. I don't know if you folk out on the West Coast know Mike Nickerson, but he runs something called the Sustainability Project. And so he's using that word in a way that it was always meant to be used, right? That we have finite resources, and if we mess it up, we're going to be in serious trouble. And so I think it's sustainwellbeing.org. It's really a beautiful visit. And he had a little business card that he gave out. And I somehow came across that business card when I was 14 years old. And I carried that business card with me until I was 25 years old and I was running my own business. And I called on him and got him to send me a bunch. And it was just a little card, and it just made me feel like I wasn't alone. And that was the green movement to me until I joined in 2005 is what does sustainability mean to you? And that is a conversation that we need to keep having. And thank you for that question. It's an important, beautiful question.
Yeah, definition has definitely been co-opted quite a few times.
We can take it back. We can take it back.
Yeah. The next audience question we got here is, I'm going to pronounce the conservative leader's name wrong, but Kolev, I think, signed up hundreds of
Kiev,
thousands. How do you say it?
Poiliev.
Polyev. Polyev signed up hundreds of thousands of new members. How do we fight the drift to the right?
I wouldn't use the word fight. That's an aggressive term, and with our commitment to nonviolence, we need to be really careful of words count, right? And language matters. And so you will see, if you just Google CPAC, Sarah Gabrielle Baron, you'll see my third press conference was about, it was on the eve of his win of the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. And there is a real drift on the right to become the alt-right. And it's mixed up with white supremacy. It's mixed up with misappropriation of religion, of what's supposed to be a beautiful religion. It's very populist. He uses a lot of very fiery language to whip up his followers. And the only thing that we can do is better, right? Is just not fall into that trap, because like I was saying earlier, we're in frightening times, right? And when a human is frightened, we chemically go into one of three states. We go into fight, flight, or freeze. And as a feminist, I insist on freeze being recognized as one of those three chemical states that we go into, right? Because when a woman is being attacked, then the blood all goes into your core and you freeze. So what a lot of conservatives type folk will do is go into fight, because we're in uncertain times. And a lot of others will go into freeze, like, everything's fine, back onto my phone, right? Where's the next Wordle? And some of us fly, right? And that is something that Greens might tend to do, is just I'm just going to go to my little corner and hide in the forest and just be with people that I love, that I know will keep me safe. And those are all perfectly natural human responses. And as Greens, what we need to do is rely on this decades buildup of ecological wisdom. That's why my campaign slogan is wisdom to change. I feel like it brings that energy of being able to slow down, recognize that we are not alone here, that we don't need to reinvent the wheel, and that we can, even though times are frightening, that we can tackle these problems, that we can embody real solution making. We already are in our communities. We can connect. We can do it all with a sense of joy and fun, and we can create infrastructures for future generations so that that what they're living in 50, 100, 150, 200 years from now, that those systems are not only livable and safe, but they are joyful. But yeah, you will see from that CPAC, that interview, that I'm not afraid to take on the alt-right. I'm not afraid to call a spade on the international and national stage. And I will just bring a sense of calm and professionalism to the conversation, but the conversation does need to be had. Fascism is on the rise, not just in Canada, but around the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that. Not fighting fire with fire, that just makes a bigger fire. Trying to douse some water on it, some cold check of reality. Okay, so we've got time for one last audience question here that's already been asked, and then we can move on to closing remarks. Where is it here? The primary purpose of the Green Party is to lead radical, transformative societal change. How do you see that happening if we do not step out front and speak frankly of the enormity of the change required? And sorry, Jim, if I'm filtering your question here. This is from my friend, Jim. Him and I have talked about this a lot. He's talking about the fact that we need to be changing a lot more aggressively than some of the talking points the Green Party's put forward. Honestly, like to survive as a society, there's a lot of, and he's talked about degrowth a lot, and there's some points that we've disagreed on about this, but he's talking about the fact that the kind of change that we need to prevent the collapse of society is largely unpopular. Um, you know, eat less meat, fly less, don't fly at all, live with lesser means kind of thing. So, um, how are we supposed to lead radical transformative change if we don't step out front and speak frankly about the enormity of the change required?
We already are, right? Greens already are. That's what we do. We do live smaller lives. Like I was saying, Small is Beautiful is one of our formative seminal works. And so we already are. The problem at the federal level is that we need a leader who's going to showcase that. And that is my entire platform. What that question is the question. And that my platform is the response to that. That is why I'm doing this. It is frightening as heck to be up here doing this, right? and I've been thinking about it my whole life long, right? Like I said earlier, capitalism, it is everything to us. It is our entire framework. And it has been for centuries. And it needs to fundamentally change. We need to evolve out of the capitalist system. We need to evolve out of the systems whereby we make war on each other. The Westphalian nation state system really is already dead. We are living in a reality where we still pretend that Westphalian nation state system is in operation, when reality, corporations have far more money and power and control on international geopolitics than nations. Individuals, rich individuals, are influencing geopolitics far more than the nation state. So we need to be a little bit more realistic at the federal level and at the international level about what's really going on. Greens talk a lot about getting out of NATO. We always have since 1988, and we believe that our peacekeeping efforts are better placed at the United Nations. That is something that I like to focus on. Yes, as Greens, what we are really good at is food security, small scale energy resiliency, retrofits. That's what we're already doing on the ground. It's my job to, at the national and international level, say that Greens also have solutions that provide stability for us going forward, stability around geopolitical peacemaking. Right? So one of my key platforms is a complete moratorium on new nuclear power, because it's inextricable from the new nuclear arms race. And we can make planet Earth a nuclear weapons-free zone, and we will make planet Earth a nuclear weapons-free zone. How do we go about doing that? You can read more into my platform. We can have policy table talks on that. Global Greens need to get together to work on these things. But from the small community level, Greens are already doing it. And it is just my job to get us together and to showcase what Greens are already doing for Canadians. We know how to live small. We know how to make the infrastructures for future generations. We're the ones doing it.
Thanks, Sarah. One last quick question. You got a minute to answer this. Rapid fire one. If you become the leader of the party, you're going to be expected to spend a lot of time out in Ottawa. Is that something you and your family are ready for? Even if you move to a different riding, I know you said you're ready for that, but you'd be back and forth all the time. It was hard on Paul. I know that.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to end with a land acknowledgement. And so I am just outside of Ottawa now. Ottawa's actually is the word Odawa, which is one of the Three Fires Confederacy nations of the Anishinaabe Nation. And it is also Algonquin First Nation territory. It is strong Métis heritage here. And I love Ottawa. So I gave up my home on Manitoulin Island, which is paradise. And I gave that up to come here for this race. And, with everything that's been going on, fundraising is not going great. And it's okay. There are two co-leaders doing their thing that make it a disadvantage to me to running, and it's okay. I believe in myself. I believe in my vision for the party, and I will do whatever it takes to help this movement grow and be as strong as it was always meant to be. I firmly believe that the green political movement is the hope for humanity, not just in Canada, not just out west, not just on the East Coast, but globally around the world.
Yeah. Okay. So we got 5 minutes to the end here. You've got the floor for about 5 minutes here to say whatever you want. Anyone else, everyone listening to hear anything that you didn't get out, and let folks know how they can follow up with you. What's your website, and any calls to action you got?
Sure. So my platform just fully came out today. It's at sarahgabriellebaron.ca. If you like what you see, please do donate to my campaign. I put my teaching career on hold for this. And Ottawa is a beautiful city, but it's also an expensive city. Donations to any of our campaigns, 50% goes to the party. And now that we are finished arbitration with Anna Paul, the party does need financial help too. I'm very happy to help 50-50 with that. And it's funny, one thing we didn't touch on was the internal turmoil at the executive level. And it's my promise to Greens that as a politician, like I was talking about earlier with that separation of powers, as a politician, it's my job in the media to always bring that conversation back to the big issues of the day. They have been hounding us candidates for more drama. They just want to keep that cycle going. And it's our job as politicians to either refuse to answer those questions in order to protect and shield our executive branch, or to just constantly bring the conversation back to the big issues of the day, because we are professionals, and the Green Party of Canada is a federal level party. And so that is, I think, the most important message, is that what we're going through right now is a normal part of what Green parties have always had to experience. And with my leadership, I bring us back to that sense of a commitment to a decentralized power structure, focusing on our electoral district associations as the seat of power of the party, focusing on the members as the seat of power of the party. And if we can get really good at that, if we can really have a good ground game, a good social media game, then we will win elections. Because if there's one thing that Greens have, it's passion and determination and optimism. We will never give up on our We will never give up on our water. We will never give up on the health of our soil. We will never give up on each other. And we will certainly never give up on future generations. We will never give up on the promise of good Crown Indigenous relations, and the promise that is as old as 1763 of Indigenous self-government. So in closing, I wish we could just have more questions. I really love the questions. It helps me get to know what's important to members. So please email me, sgb@greenparty.ca. And, please reach out to me as often as possible. It's these member-to-member discussions. And I still in many ways consider myself just a member, just a rank and file member. Because that's my experience in the party, right? Is having this political philosophy. I also teach Indigenous studies. That's my degree. I have 2 degrees in Indigenous studies, and I've just been watching what's going on for so long, and thinking, okay, what are we missing here? What's wrong with our structures? How can we fix this? And so you see all of that as of today on sarahgabriellebaron.ca. I have one more section of my platform coming out later this week, which is my list of deliverables. And so please feel free to dig into that, and please reach out to me anytime. sgb@greenparty.ca.
Great. Thanks so much for coming on, Sarah. It was nice chatting with you. Reminder to everybody, our next interview is same time, same day, and as is the next one. We'll be doing these Tuesdays at 6:30 p.m. is when it starts. Go to the same link, just on our YouTube channel. You'll be able to find it there. And if anybody reaches out to you and says, "Hey, I missed that thing," they'll probably reach out to me. But if they missed it, we'll be emailing out the direct link to this recording once we've posted it. And it'll always, as always, it'll be available on our YouTube channel. So next week, the 27th, Tuesday, the 27th at 6:30 p.m., we're going to be interviewing Jonathan Penot and Elizabeth May. And Sarah Gabrielle Baron's website again is...
It's, you know what, would you be able to put it in the information that goes with this YouTube?
Sure. Yeah. We did that with the last one. We'll do that for yours as well.
Great.
Yeah, it'll be
it
on the
is sarahgabriellebaron.ca, which is long. So we are thinking of switching it to sgb.ca or something like that. Yeah, you'll know it when you see it because it's a very unique website. It's got an all black background and gold and white text. And it's got my logo with the tree that says wisdom to change.
Right on. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Sarah. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next week. I'm gonna end the live stream now here, and we can chat a little bit in the Zoom if you want.
One more thing, Derek. I should let members know, anybody who's listening, is that my social media is SGB_Canada.
Okie doke. SGB_Canada. I'm assuming on Instagram and Facebook.